The ancient Romans were known for their poor hygiene and filthy ways. They drank the blood of gladiators to cure epilepsy, traded in human poo, and tasted vomit to diagnose disease. So disgusting were their habits that reading them could make one's stomach churn. So, one would expect such people of filth to embrace all manner of people, including those they deem ugly. But no, not the Romans. They mocked and ridiculed ugly women, forcing them to apply strange potions and indulge in weird habits just to conform to Rome's beauty standards. From removing freckles with incinerated snails to preventing wrinkles with the fat of a swan, the women would do everything in their power and within their means to appear attractive. We begin with prestige and social standing. Ancient Romans disliked ugly women because of prestige and social standing. Men with beautiful wives were often praised by their peers, which enhanced their honor in the eyes of the public. Younger men admired them and hoped that they would one day end up with pretty maidens as well. Men who married beautiful women walked with a certain air and pride, especially when they walked around town in the company of their wives. They even loved to escort their wives wherever she went, just so they could bask in the admiration of all who looked their way. On the contrary, men with ugly wives were the butt of all peer jokes. They were constantly ridiculed for their wives' looks, which decreased their prestige. Many of them didn't want to be seen with their wives in public and would rather go out alone to avoid the unsavory gossip that always followed them. They were afraid to speak about their wives or praise them among their peers, and prayed to the heavens that the subject of women never came up for discussion. The pain of a man with an ugly wife was comparable to the shame of a marketplace thief. So why would any man want to go through all that emotional and psychological torture when they can just get themselves a beautiful wife? Thus, they avoided ugly women like the plague. Another reason is depiction in arts and culture. We would all love to see our wives, mothers, or sisters' faces splashed across the world's most prestigious magazines with the caption, "The most beautiful woman alive." The attention, pride, and honor alone it would bring us would be unimaginable. I mean, look at guys like Kevin Federline and Travis Barker, who suddenly became famous thanks to the women they married. The same thing happened in Rome. Beautiful women stood a better chance of being depicted in arts and culture. They often served as models for sculptors and painters, which is similar to models of today. Take a cursory look at some of the statues of ancient Roman women that have survived to this day, and you'll struggle to find an ugly one. So imagine the pride of a man walking around the town and seeing the image of his wife, sister, or mother on a wall. Imagine the sense of satisfaction on his face as everybody points approving fingers at him as the lord of the pretty women in the painting. Who wouldn't want to be in his shoes? Many would give an arm and a leg to attain that kind of status. Of course, ugly women received equal attention, but for reasons other than admiration. They were frequently mocked as they walked by, albeit not openly. Usually they'd hear whispers and giggling once they walked past, and when they turned, they'd see people eyeballing them. The men weren't spared either. They avoided places where paintings or statues of beautiful women were displayed for fear of mockery. I can imagine men with ugly wives walking by with their shoulders slumped and their heads bowed, avoiding eye contact with every passerby. They might even dread arguing with anyone for fear of being beaten with their wives' looks. Example, your wife was so ugly when she was born the doctor slapped her mother. But you see, beauty is relative. What one group might consider beautiful could be seen as ugly by another. For example, men in Asia might prefer slender, petite ladies with big bosoms, but thicker ladies in Africa could cause a human traffic jam. So what body type did the Romans consider attractive? Well, this depends largely on the period, but from the surviving paintings and statues of women, some scholars deduce that they preferred fleshy women with wider hips and smaller bosoms. According to scholars, bigger bosoms were a sign of old age and thus were considered unattractive. The Romans also preferred firm, well-rounded breasts to pendulous ones that swang helplessly across the chest whenever the bearer was in motion. Thus, adolescent girls also wore a bra-like strophium around their chests and tightened it so hard that it made breathing difficult for one absurd reason: to prevent their breasts from growing larger. In fact, the craze for rounded breasts reached dizzying heights when the girls would massage their breasts with the hemlock plant to prevent them from sagging. However, like everyone else, age caught up with them, and their breasts lost their firmness, falling from grace. However, your like and subscription to our channel will keep it firm and help us to produce more entertaining and informative historical content. So go on then, do us a favor, it would mean ever so much to us. Now, where was I? Oh yes, bosoms. Interestingly now, body type wasn't the only physical quality that turned the heads of Roman men. A pale skin color was the epitome of beauty. It showed that the woman was from a wealthy family. Women or girls from lower classes like today did odd menial jobs, which meant spending a great deal of time in the sun. Thus, they were prone to skin burns. However, girls from rich homes usually had slaves that served their every need. And if they ever had to venture out, they made sure that they protected their skin from the violent sun. Therefore, their skin was well-toned. So, to stay in competition with the rich folk, women from poor backgrounds had a trick or two up their sleeves. They rubbed chalk on their skin to give it that pale color and bathed in donkey milk to add some shine. All spots on the skin, including freckles, wrinkles, and pimples, were also deemed repulsive. So, at best, women had to ensure that they got rid of them, or, at worst, hide them. Thus, they applied all manner of potions and oils, including swan fat and incinerated snails, to eliminate these undesirable spots. If a woman couldn't afford these oils and potions, she was better off hiding them. She dared not step into a public gathering with any skin blemish, lest men look down on her with utter scorn. So she applied chalk or poppy petals, depending on the type and color of the blemish. But I'm curious. I wonder how a man felt after having a good time with such a woman, only to realize their beauty was all a scam. However, from the look of things, men of ancient Rome could easily tell if a woman's beauty was, for lack of a better word, fake. You see, most of the cosmetics the women applied had a strong stench. The rich could hide this stench with expensive perfumes, but the poor were left to their fate. Thus, if a man got together with a lady and she smelled heavily of animal feces, chances are she's a fake. At this point, depending on the man's level of excitement, he could choose to continue his adventure or call off the game. However, he couldn't accuse the woman of defrauding him by false pretenses. After all, the signs were stinkily obvious. But sadly, the fate of the disabled in ancient Rome was worse than ugly women. According to the 12 tables, which formed the foundation for Roman law, children with disabilities were executed by stoning. Worse still, babies who were born disabled were exposed on a hillside. Now, exposure here means that the disabled babies were left outside the city unattended and at the mercy of the weather. They cried until they passed away due to starvation, sickness, or attack from wild animals. Unfortunately, they were exposed far away from the city, and thus their deafening cries could never reach the ears of their mother. Fortunately, thank goodness, this practice waned as the centuries passed, and by the 3rd century, laws were passed to cater to the disabled in Roman societies. Parents were no longer required to expose their handicapped babies, but to care for them. And eventually, the Romans founded a welfare state that saw to the interests of the handicapped. With that, we draw the curtain on today's episode. But before we say our goodbyes, do remember to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more interesting videos such as this. You can also check out the weird, wonderful history of Julius Caesar. I'll see you there, and thanks ever so much for watching.